Hi there, welcome back to the Mindset Check podcast. I'm your host, Misha McKittrick. This is a podcast where we believe that as you take time for a mindset check, you have more power than you think you do. And we also believe that when you stop and think about what you're thinking about, you can harness that power. You'll see what I'm talking about in today's episode. I want to dive in. I always love starting the episode by asking how you are. And I know you can't answer me, right? Like in this moment, you're always more than welcome to message me, reach out to me. I've created a lot of ways, especially with the Mindset Check Facebook group, where you can get support. But I offer that to you because I want you to know that I care about how you're doing. And I also want you to take a moment to answer that question, to say how you're feeling, and you'll see why later in the episode. I just want you to take a moment right now and try to name your feelings, like some of the feelings that you've been feeling. You don't need to write it down or anything, just say it out loud. Just say what you've been feeling lately, like joy and elatement. Like, what have you been, are you feeling like you're kind of dragging? You feel like you're stuck in the mud? Do you feel sad? Do you feel depressed? Do you feel excited? Do you feel hopeful? What are you feeling? Try to name it. Okay, now moving on, I just always love addressing that in this first season of the Mindset Check podcast, we're reading through my journal from when I was 15 and pregnant. So you're kind of, if you're new, jumping into a story that we've been talking about for a minute. So if you want to go back and listen to the first episode, you're more than welcome to do that, or just dive in with us right now. We're cool with whichever. So these are a few years where I tackle some tough things of being pregnant really young and then losing my little girl. And so we're kind of right in the middle of all of this business. And to outline who's who in today's podcast episode, really, it's kind of simple. Ashley, Dallin, and Braden are my niece and two nephews, both from different families, but they're both Jesse's sister's kids, okay? So Jesse is my husband at the time of the podcast, and Laura, we talk about in the podcast, she is a good friend who's going through a very similar situation, and we've been talking about her in a few episodes, so she'll be in this episode as well. And then we talk about my mom and my sisters. That's pretty obvious of who they are. Taylor's my daughter, and Walter is my father-in-law. Okay, so he's married to Jesse's mom, and in the last episode, he was in the hospital. And that's right where we start off in the journal, so let's jump in. August 8th, 1994. Well, Walter's going home tomorrow morning. We cut Taylor's bangs Wednesday just so they weren't scraggly and in her face. She's going to a modeling agency Thursday, and we will have to see what happens. Jesse works at Wells Cargo. He puts floors in trailers, works from 3:30 p.m. to 2 a.m. He hates it and only gets about $15 an hour and wants a different job. Saturday, we went shopping with Mary. She bought me a dress and some heels. Jesse bought me some brown shoes. And she bought Jesse some clothes and shoes for his birthday. That's on the 31st. Sunday, yesterday, was my mom and dad's 25th anniversary. And my dad is in Washington. Ever since my birthday, he's been gone. First to Colorado, and then California and Washington. He will probably be there another month. August 17th, 1994. It was my mom's birthday yesterday, and I forgot to call. But I made up for it and called today. August 25th, 1994. Man, this month has gone by so quick. Well, the whole summer has. Well, the modeling agency, quote, hired Tay. She's the cutest baby they have. My mom and sisters came up last weekend and brought some darling pictures of Tay. The other day, she was in her swing and the cat scratched her legs, and she probably
thinks it's a toy. She has the start of an ear infection and a cold. The other day, when I was cutting her fingernails, I cut too much and it bled. I felt so bad. Ashley, Brayden, and Dallin are in school. And when I talked to Ashley, she was so excited. Well, I started school too, and I feel totally out of place there. I'll give it a little more time, and maybe I'll find some friends or something. Anyway, there's a nursery right across the hall that Tay goes to. And so that should be pretty convenient. Jesse's working graveyard at Zero Wire, a cable company. Another job. He sleeps during the day. Oh my gosh, this is so sad. We seen Laura's sister in the factory stores, and she said that her mom is being a real bleep and won't let Laura come home and does not want her to keep the baby. I feel pretty bad, but I know she could make it on her own if she wants to.
Okay, we're going to come back to all of that. Let's start at the top. Let's just start breaking it all down. So, Jesse has another job, already wants another one, and then just a few days later, has a different job. We talked about that last episode, so we're not going to dive into that. There's a part where I mentioned that my dad is traveling, but I don't mention what he does. So it might be a little bit confusing. So for his work, he was the communications expert for fires or natural disasters. He would wire the radios so that teams could talk to each other, you know, on the ground, in the air, on the other side of the fire, that kind of thing. So in the summer, my dad was gone a lot because there was potentially a lot of fires. So my mom she really could do the things that maybe some women couldn't do because my dad was gone a lot in the summers and she was just a very capable person. She could hook up our trailer for the family reunion and handle it all, you know, tow it, the whole thing. So I always really admired her for that and instilling that example in us girls. It was so great. I mentioned that a modeling agency hired Taylor. It's kind of funny because really the all that ever came of that was that they took her pictures and they put her in their calendar. That's really all that ever came. But you know what? Those pictures are pictures that I treasure. And back then, cameras just that we had at the ready, like that we put film in, they didn't have as much clarity as like a professional camera. And so those pictures are so much more clear than some of the other pictures that I have. And I just treasure them so much. And I thought, you know what, if you guys want to see the pictures, then I'll post them in the Mindset Check Facebook group. So if you're interested, they really are so amazing. Her little face, you know what, I'm biased. I'm her mom, and I know every parent is a little biased, but her features she just seems so mature, even just by looking at her face. So have a look. She's beautiful. I also mentioned that my mom and sisters travel up and bring some awesome pictures of Taylor. I have all of my pictures of her, but I don't know which ones that they would have brought up. So that was kind of obviously that meant a lot to me. I mentioned Taylor in the swing, and I mentioned Ashley and Brayden and Dallin, and those are, you know, her cousins, and they just got the biggest kick out of her. They would they would laugh so much with her. They just loved her so much. They adored her. And so we have all these funny memories of them, you know, peeking their head around the corner when she's in the swing and just she's at the age where she's just really interacting with people and just erupting into laughter. So that was a much needed break of everything that was going on in, you know, the forefront of my life. That just accompanied and brought so many good feelings. Another just funny story from that period of time was, and this will just kind of give you an idea of these cute boys, Brayden and Dallin. One time I was coming home and I had a specific spot where kind of like I parked, and it was off to the side of the driveway, just kind of right off to the side. But there was this like short retaining wall that my tire could fall off if I got kind of too close. And so I was always kind of nervous pulling into the driveway. And so one day, you know, Brayden was with me and we have the funniest, it was just a story that we laughed really hard at. So I tell Brayden, roll down the window and tell me how close my tire is. Mind you, he's like 12. And he rolls down his window and he's like, yeah, you can go. Okay, a little bit more. And then all of a sudden the window starts rolling up on him, like on his head. And he starts screaming. He's like, no, oh my gosh, stop rolling up the window. I'm like, I'm not rolling up the window. Oh my gosh, what's happening? Because he couldn't like get his head back through before the window was coming up. And I noticed that he was kneeling on the control for the window. And I reached over and grabbed his leg and just pulled it off of that window and then quickly rolled it down. And luckily he didn't get hurt. And it was just enough for all of us just to erupt in laughter. We were laughing so hard, and we went in the house and told his mom. And Tanya just had such a gift for laughter as well. So just, it was such a good, congenial, like, atmosphere, you know, that was kind of going on in the background. So I just bring that up so that you can recognize and realize that it's not like everything around me was horrible and terrible. We had a lot of fun with what was going on in the background. And I think that's going to especially be really important in the next few episodes that are up and coming, that there was a lot of good going on in the background, and there were barbecues and laughter and fun and friendship and love. And that was really, really good. Okay, I mentioned that, you know, all the cousins are going back to school. I talked to Ashley. She was going back to school. She was so excited. I vividly remember her outfit from that year. This girl is just, she still holds such an incredible and special place in my heart. And we together have looked back on the pictures from this year and just laughed our guts out. She has the cutest striped overalls on with this collared white shirt underneath. For whatever reason, she has on these black tights with sandals. And we just were in an uproar laughing over these pictures and how amazing it was that she had such self-expression, and still does to this day. You know, doesn't really hold a lot of like what other people think about her. It doesn't really get in the way. And I just loved thinking about that picture, looking back at her, you know, and being so excited to go to school. Okay, and then the school that I started, it was really amazing. And I know that I mentioned that I felt out of place. I was experiencing a little bit of culture shock. All of a sudden I was around a lot of people that I had never been around before. And it was a lot. It was very eye-opening and a really cool experience. And the best part about the school is I mentioned that this nursery is right across the hallway, and they just left the doors open when we were all learning. So what happened is that we were able to hear our baby, if that was our baby's cry, and we were able to go in and take our baby, change their diaper, figure out what they needed, and then take them back to the nursery and go back to class. And we all took turns in this nursery. And then when it was lunchtime, we all grabbed our babies and, you know, put them on our hip or in walkers next to us while we were having lunch. I vividly remember Taylor learning how to drink from a straw at that lunch, one of those lunches, and just how much all of those girls fell in love with her. And I likewise for them and their babies. And we were in the same spot in life, and we raised our babies together in those moments. It was amazing. And not only did we learn and apply ourselves in the classes that we were in, in history and science and math and all of those, but we also had art class. And art class for me, I've mentioned before that painting was such a part of my therapy in the future, and I think even ongoing. And so we had these projects where we were continually painting at school. And then when we were done with whatever we could accomplish that day, we'd all put them in cupboards, and then the next, class would come in or whatever. But it was an amazing space. It was an amazing space. And we'll talk a little bit more about that space and that school in a few weeks. So now I want to address Lara and my heart hurting for her and being mad for her and wanting to kind of protect her. And, I want to know, how her future self, looks back on all of that. Because maybe she wasn't experiencing it the way that I was seeing it, I have no idea. And I have no idea with her looking back on the situation, what she would say. One thing that I just think is really amazing is that everybody has different situations that they've had in life, whether, they had a pregnancy when they were young, or I've talked to many people through my story who have had abortions, and gosh, people go through a lot. We go through a lot in life. And what matters the most, and we've talked about this so much, is that what matters the most in life is not really what happens. What matters is what we think about what happens. Even if we think something in our life kind of sucks, like the outcome or the way that it all played out, the way that it sucks, even if we can get ourselves into a space where we can process it in a healthy way, then we can teach ourselves to think about it differently. And if we do that, then we can have different emotions, and we have a different outcome. We're going to dive into that really deep today. At first, I just want to illustrate or to point out that I was living this. I stated that Lara, I know she could make it on her own. And I think that it's so interesting that I wrote that, because I was living it and I was in the struggle. I was in the stress. Right? But here I am saying, but I know she can do it on her own. So is that truly a lack of compassion, or what is that? And to me, I've evaluated that, and I just thought, I believed in me. I believed in my capability. And so therefore I applied that to everyone, right? I believe she's capable. I believe she can do it. So even though I was in the struggle, I had the belief that I could do it. And I also had a network of people who, even though I was in the middle and I was in the struggle, I still had a belief that I was surrounded with people that wouldn't let me fall. Even though I was really not being given money, I was really scraping by and, doing the best with what I could. But I still just harnessed and held that belief. And so I sat today for a little bit and really thought about, well, why did I have that belief? Where did it come from? And how can I teach you and help you look at your own beliefs and look at the choice that you have inside your beliefs? If you believe something that you don't like, how we can do something about that. Or how we can look at the beliefs that you do have and help them propel you even further. And so a couple of the things that came up for me when I really evaluated this is, if you've listened to my previous episodes, you really get the idea that my dad referred to me as an emancipated adult. He told me over and over that he was there to counsel me now and not parent me, that he believed I could make the hard decisions that were in front of me. And that belief being planted in me, propelled so much in me. I didn't even realize it at the time, but when I look back at it now, I realize how much that did for me. Also, I evaluated that from a young age, I was asked, I really felt capable because I was asked to locate the perfect spot for a picnic. Or maybe we would be on the boat or on the shore fishing, and my dad would say, Mish, where do you feel the fish are biting? Where do you feel that they are? And I'd try to get in tune with that, and then I'd go, let's go over there. Let's go over there, Dad. And then I was validated when I caught a fish, right? It's yes, I can pick a spot. Yes, I can feel the fish. I remember my mom asking me to pick the type of birthday cake that I wanted, and she would spend hours on the cake. She would just do those little star icing decorations, and we got to choose our favorite cartoon. She was bringing to life what I spoke, giving me validation. So yes, the things I'm telling you about were influenced by my parents. And again, notice how small they are. They're small. They're things that we have the capability to pass to the people around us. But you also have the capability to bring that same influence in your life over your own thoughts. So part of learning to love yourself includes not allowing yourself to sit in emotions or thoughts that are destructive to you. So training your mind, new pathways of thinking, so that you can change out thoughts of inadequacy or ill intentions towards your own self. So trading those things out for thoughts that are proof of the good. Thoughts that you are a beautiful, capable person. Things that are true about you that you can call on, that you can speak, that you know are true. Those are some of the best ways to prove to yourself that you are good. And staying in the bad feelings only disables you from doing more of the things that lend you the proof that you are good. And it can be so simple. The most simple things that bring proof that you are a beautiful and capable person. Whatever it is that you want to bring to life. So to dive into this a little bit deeper, let's get down to the distinction between thoughts and feelings. Sometimes we go through life and we kind of confuse the two. I'll ask my son, I'll say, so how are you feeling? How's life going for you? My kids will laugh at me because that's something that I ask them often, how's life going for you? What are you feeling? And one of my kids in particular will say, Mom, okay, so there's this kid at school, and then he goes on to tell me a story of things that happened and a thought that that's producing. And so we still walk through that, but I'm interpreting what his feelings are. Does that make sense? So if he comes home and says, yeah, there's this kid that's bullying me, and I can see the feelings over his face, and he's just kind of bummed and really bugged by it, and I'd be like, I'm confused, whatever. And then he'll tell me the story. Maybe instead of saying, it really makes me feel horrible when that kid says that about me. So one thing that I'm going to challenge myself to do more is to, even though I'm reading my son's feelings, I'm going to say, so what does that make you feel? What does that actually make you feel, right? Because it's important to be able to see that. There was a guy named Brad, and he went to his mentor's office, and his mentor asked him how he was feeling. the way that he answered her was that he said, I feel like I'm not good enough. And she quickly responded, that's a thought, not a feeling. And so learning the difference between a thought and a feeling is really important. Feelings are an experience of an emotion. Feelings are produced from thoughts. So if we can pin down the difference, we can more adequately figure out the thought that's triggering the feeling. When you feel something, it's important to look at what's producing it. And then you can decide if it has place with you. I'm not telling you not to feel. I'm telling you that you get to decide what you think. And so if there's some stuff coming up for you that you need to process and you need to feel, go right ahead. But sometimes we get stuck in that loop. And we continue to find proof of things that we're thinking in our life because that's how our brain works. Thoughts bring feelings. And then that brings proof into our life, and we continue to repeat the cycle. I was in yoga the other day, and my instructor was telling me about a story that happened in her studio like the week earlier. And she was out in the lobby, and there was a yoga class going on, and there was a guy that was familiar to her that had taken her classes before that came out into the lobby, and he was just so worked up, like breathing heavy, and he was like just kind of out of place and out of sorts, and just like really, she could just read that he was, ridden with anxiety and stress. And she just said, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" And he said, I'm experiencing so much anxiety. Like I've been in there before over and over. I've never felt that. What is this? And he's kind of grasping for breath. And she said, stop. What did you think before you felt this? What was the thought before you felt this? And he stopped and he said, it was about those stocks. It was about finances. Something that he was stressed about and worried about. And she walked him through how that was producing the anxiety that he was feeling in that room. And in yoga, I love yoga because they say, they teach you the mindfulness of your thoughts. I love it when my instructor says, the thoughts that you came here with, let's just check them at the door. Because they're still going to be there when you go out. And then you get to choose if you pick them up or not. And I love that because it causes us to think about what we're thinking about, to think about what we're carrying with us, and then to evaluate that choice if it's something that we want to keep. I love, think about what you're thinking about. And I don't think we take time to stop and ponder about the subject of what we're actually thinking about. So let's break it down really easy for a minute. I remember when my kids were young and I was raising them, and I learned something called the art of distraction. That with kids, it's actually best not to say, stop throwing that ball, because what are they going to think about? They're thinking about throwing the ball. Instead, you have to give them the blocks and distract them, right? The art of distraction. And I think our minds work similarly, that when we think something over and over, if it's something that we don't want to do, when we repeat the image of it over and over, all we're doing is giving our brain energy for that thought, to bring that thought into our life. Okay, so if a soccer player misses the goal, even when he's thought to himself, don't miss it. Well, he's thinking the wrong thing. He's going to miss it. He has to think of what he wants, not what he doesn't want. He has to think, make this shot, see the back of the net. Let me study that, where I want that to go, exactly, the rope on the net. Let me study the thought and the sound that it makes when it goes in the net, right? Those are the things that you focus on. You focus on what you want. Okay. Or what if you are trying to make better food choices and you're like, okay, I know there's chocolate cake in the kitchen, but I am not going to eat that thing. No, I'm not. And every time you pass through the kitchen, you say like, don't eat that. No, don't eat that. What are you going to do? You're going to eat the cake. You unknowingly give energy to these thoughts. You are unknowingly weakening your resistance to the thing. See how important it is to break down and to think about what we're thinking about. We win when we replace the thought, when we get out the blocks, when we see ourselves finishing the goal, or when we replace what we don't want to eat with what we do want to put in our body. And those are the images we show ourselves. I'm going to eat that grapefruit today. I'm going to drink that smoothie today. I'm going to eat that superfood, right? Then we bring that into our life. So remember that there's a bit of trickery about what we think about. I love thinking about actually outsmarting our brains. Most people spend very little time reflecting about the way that they think. But the way that you think turns into your reality. And so if you're drawing inaccurate images, then you're limiting your potential. So somebody that I love in this space, okay, and I love, I always joke that I love Joe Dispenza in the most appropriate way. Because I just think I'm actually really in love with the work that he's doing and contributing to society. So if you don't know who he is, you might want to check him out. Joe does lots of different experiments and he blows my mind all the time. But one of the things he teaches his students is that when you feel a negative state, like a heightened sense of negativity, fear, self-doubt, worry, unworthiness, he teaches them how to regulate their internal state. So what's going on inside of them. And he does this by teaching them to master their environment and their bodies. He helps people understand how to move into elevated states, especially during meditation. Because if we can practice the way that we feel during meditation, then that's practice for real life. So it's easier to move into a state of love when we're functioning and operating on a normal day. When thoughts come up that kind of get in our way, we can say, no, I actually know how to choose those thoughts because I taught myself in meditation. That's kind of how I first started experiencing yoga. Like what I started to experience there was peace, and then I was able to be less reactive in life. And so he's doing this through meditation and helping people feel new emotions, new modes of thinking, so that they can affect their own neurochemistry, so that they can feel something different, so that they can recreate their future. It's amazing. So he talks about when we live in our past and we have had, everybody living has had traumas, betrayals, right? We become resigned and cynical because of life. Things happen to us. But the thing that's interesting is when our life isn't going so good, we can look back at those things and kind of blame them. Like, I went through yada, 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 so that's why I am the way I am. Right? It makes a great excuse for why we haven't been able to change or move forward. And when we do that, we give away our power, okay, to whatever event or person or thing that exists in our past. And then we get in our own way. We give away our power and our ability to change for the future. So his work teaches us that when we think and feel long enough within those states, the negativity from the past. That becomes our state of being. That becomes who we are. And he shows us scientifically how we can move out of that. How that's actually a choice. And it all starts with what we think. Because your body doesn't actually know the difference between the real life event or the memory that you're reliving. And so if we can teach ourselves to be mindful about what our thoughts are, think about what we're thinking about, and you can start with the small things, you guys. You can start with the chocolate cake. You don't have to start with like, oh my gosh, I had an abortion. You don't have to start with the hard. You can start with the easy things, and you can teach yourself a pattern. And then once you really get that your thoughts are your choice, that processing those things and thinking something, that we create something different for our future. This is what Joe recommends. He recommends to write down your negative thoughts, because sometimes when we can see what we're actually thinking in front of us, it actually scares us. We're like, what? I wasn't really aware that I was thinking that. Like that I was being that hard on myself. And that just kind of shocks us into awareness. And then he says to write down the new thoughts of what you do want to fire and wire in your brain. And then you get to rehearse those things. So it's a lot like what we've talked about affirmations in the past, that if you rehearse those things that you want to believe every single day, then you teach your brain a new pattern of thinking. You teach your brain to refer to yourself as a different person. You teach your body emotionally what your future is going to feel like. And if you can do that, then your past falls away and you create a new future. So remember, think about what you're thinking about and remind yourself that you get to choose your thoughts. And when you start small, you teach your brain how to do it. So even if it's brand new for you, then you just make it simple by starting with the little things, and you flip. You say the things you don't want, and then you flip it. And you decide what you want in its place. And then you start looking for proof for ways that those things show up. Like when I would catch a fish in the place that I felt the fish. That helped me to install the hardwiring that I'm a capable person. That I'm capable of finding the fish, right? It's like when a little kid goes out and first starts to hit a ball with a bat. And when they first connect, they're like, their self-confidence goes through the roof. So start small if you have to. And then dive into the things that are bigger, that will help you break out of the negative cycles. And continue to feel your future. Feel what you want to bring into your life. And don't be afraid to dream big. Don't be afraid. Because maybe for me at that time, when I was, literally existing on assistance from the state, handling very little money, being a teen mom, trying to raise this baby girl, and having, being married to someone who was not completely stepping in to be a supportive person. I had a lot of reason that I could not have believed in myself. And I think that I did believe in myself. And because I believed in myself, and sure, it helped that people around me believed in me too. But I'm telling you that even if you're surrounded with unbelief of others, you can harness your power. Debbie Rivers said, "You can choose your thoughts. Many people don't even realize that it's possible. I recommend you choose your thoughts much more carefully than you choose what you're going to wear, as they have so much more impact. I hope that you're starting to see that your thoughts produce your feelings, and your neurochemistry between the relationship between the two is what brings about your future. The great part about it is that you get to choose, no matter what anyone else around you thinks. You get to choose your thoughts. And with that, I hope you see and understand that you have more power than you think you do. I feel like one of the best ways that I harness my future self, that I can feel pumped and jazzed and excited and I just feel amazing empowerment moving through my body, is by listening to music that motivates and inspires me. So this week on Instagram, I'm going to put together a little post where I ask you to share your favorite song that motivates and inspires you. And then I will create a playlist and I'll link it in the Mindset Check Facebook group so that you'll have an incredible list that you can listen to every day or whenever you want, that can go along with elevating your thoughts and choosing to think about what you're thinking about. So I hope that that will be something that's a great asset for you. Please don't forget that this podcast can grow with your help. If you think this information is helpful, then I would adore it if you will share it and if you'll leave us a review. If you will rate and review this podcast, it actually helps the algorithm suggest it more to other people. So that's really helpful for the podcast's sake. So I would love it if you would subscribe and rate and review the podcast. And of course, like I said, share it with your friends. If you have any thoughts that you would like to share with me, you can send me an email at hello@myfriendmisha.com, or you can DM me on Instagram at myfriendmisha. And hey, I just want to say thank you again for just letting me. This is so sincere from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for diving deep with me in these episodes. These aren't lighthearted episodes. And I'm just really grateful that you are brave and willing to walk through your journey with me. And remember that as you take time for a mindset check, when you take time to think about what you're thinking about, you have more power than you think you do. Until next time, my friend.